Today I'm going to be using some items from the Let's Celebrate kit from Love from Lizi to make 4 cards. Hey, it's Beth. Welcome. Today I'm going to be using some items from the Let's Celebrate Love from Lizi kit. It's the January 2025 kit. And I'm going to be using these items along with my No Scraps sketch set number 10 to make some birthday cards today. So I have the Let's Celebrate stamp set, the stencil that goes along with the stamp set so that you can color up the balloons or use the sentiments, 2 sheets of the pattern paper, and then I have 2 sheets of the cardstock that came in the kit. These will be my card bases, and then I just have a sheet of white cardstock from my stash that I will use for my stamping. Those are the products I know for sure I'm going to be using. I may bring in some additional embellishments that came with the kit as well. But let's go ahead and get started on our cards and see where that takes us.
I'm going to start off with my stamping. I want to use that bunch of balloons. And so I wanted to go ahead and get it stamped and let it dry. And I want to stamp it twice to use on, my intent was to use it on both of my cards that are the sketch A. And so I just wanted to make sure I could fit both my balloon bunches on that sheet of white cardstock. Because this is the first time I've used it, I just want to condition it a little bit with some of the oils on my hand to get rid of some of that stickiness that is on the stamp. So I got it stamped once. We'll go ahead and stamp it again. You can see how easily and cleanly it stamps. It just needs 2 inkings, which is pretty good. And then we'll put my MISTI away, and then I decided I wanted to stamp the individual balloon. I don't end up using this. The plan I had for it didn't quite pan out, but so I went ahead and stamped these, thinking I could use these on my cards. And then as an afterthought, I'm like, ooh, I need to also do my sentiment. So pulled out the Let's Celebrate sentiment, got the ink back out. Thought I'd just get all my stamping done so everything can have time to dry. And then while that's drying, I'm going to move on to cutting down my pattern paper sheets according to my cutting guide for sketch set 10. And I have this first sheet is not directional, so it doesn't really matter. The next sheet I'm using is directional, so you just want to make sure that the pattern is going in a vertical direction. So like there's a 3x4 piece that you need to cut. So you want to make sure you cut it like vertically at 3 and then horizontally at 4, so it's in the right direction. So get these last strips cut up. And now that my ink has had time to dry, I am going to do some very basic ink blending on that bunch of balloons using the stencil that goes along with the stamp set. So I found a few distress oxides and 1 distress ink in my stash that kind of match the colors of the balloons as best as I could. And so again, just doing some really basic, not really trying to shade, just trying to add some color to the balloons. I started with the green. Next up, I am going to pull in a yellow. This one isn't a distress oxide, it's just distressed. It's just distressed. It's just a distressed ink, one of the small cubes. I don't have a lot of yellows, so I was looking for a lighter yellow, but this one works out okay. And I'm just cleaning off my stencil in between each one just to make sure that there's no ink bleed underneath. It was pretty clean every time, but I just wanted to make sure. And I'm just using a piece of washi tape to hold it down each time. So next I'm going to move to a pink. And this stencil makes adding some color to these balloons so easy and quick. I had a lot of fun with this. I don't do a lot of ink blending, but I really enjoyed this process. It's kind of stress-free. And then last, I'm going to add some blue. And then now that my ink blending is done, I'm going to set that aside. And my intent was, and I did actually do this for both of the balloon bunches that I cut. I just thought I'd do one with you on camera. And then I'm going to fussy cut it out. I'm trying to leave a white border around it because I know at least it's going on some busy paper, but at least on one of those patterns it's going on balloon paper. So I wanted to leave the white border to help kind of separate the two balloon patterns. This one is brighter, so it does stand out on its own anyway, but we'll just finish off this last little bit down here by the strings and the bow of holding the bunch together. And then we'll set that aside again and let that dry. And now we're going to work on putting together sketch A. And so I realized that I was going to be using the smaller strips to piece together behind my big rectangle panels. So once I have that figured out, and then I also realized that because those balloon strips are going to need to go up and down, I'm going to have to turn this first card horizontal. So it's at this point I realized I'm not going to be able to use both of those balloon bunches. I mean, I probably could, but it wasn't going to do what I had intended. So I just thought we'll kind of switch it up. So I'm just adding adhesive to the back of these strips and trying to line it up on my mat so that I can get them in, straight across, since there's a big separation in between. And then we'll add my rectangle piece down. And then on this one, I decided to pull in some ephemera as well. But we're going to go ahead and move on to putting the second card of sketch A. Each sketch makes 2 cards, so we're going to end up with 4 today. So I'm going to go through the same process. This time, after I get my strips on, I can turn it vertically and add the balloon panel on. And I do want to note that I checked before I started doing my voiceover, and it looks like the January kit is still available, as are some of the add-ons. So I will link all that in the description box below for you. I had somehow gotten a little bit of the yellow ink on the strings holding the balloons together, so I decided, in an effort to try and cover that up, the kit came with a couple pieces of baker's twine. There was a purple and white and a pink and white. And so I brought in the pink and white and just created a really simple bow. And then I decided that sentiment, I was trying to figure out where to put my sentiment anyway, but I figured I would use my sentiment also to help cover up that yellow. So I'm just going to add some fishtails to it and then put it right above the bow, kind of across the center of the strings holding the bunch together. So now I can just go ahead and glue all of that down. And if you missed, if you're curious what is included in the January kit, I did do an unboxing video at the end of December. And so I will link that in the description box below for you so you can go and check that out. This is a really fun kit. I'm having a lot of fun with this one. So I added a little bit of glue to the center of my bow, and then once I got it down, I kind of went back in and added a little bit of extra glue to either side, and then just let stamp block sit on that for a while to help hold it down. And now I'm just going to try and find what kind of ephemera piece I want to use on this card. Like I already had the Let's Celebrate sentiment, so I just trying to find something that would work with that. So I decided on this deck of presents, and I'm just going to set it off to the left, and then we'll orient my sentiment kind of underneath it, but heading off to the right. And so the base of these first two cards is done, and so I'm going to go ahead and move on to sketch B. And since I had my inks and my blending brushes out, I decided to go ahead and use the happy birthday sentiment on the stencil as well. And I'm just going to kind of do like a very basic ombre. So I started off with a green at the top, and I kind of let it go down into some of the taller letters in the word birthday. And then I used the blue on the birthday word at the bottom, but also kind of let it bleed over into some of the happy, like the tails of the happy. So there's just a little bit of overlap that kind of allows for an ombre look. So I did do 2 of those, and then we'll set those aside and let those dry. And I'm going to cut the fishtail banners for the strips that go on sketch B. So on sketch B, I want to use one of the long strips and one of the short strips on each card. And so I'm just going to alternate the patterns. And I'm going to use the green cardstock in the kit for my card bases. On this one, I have already cut them and folded them. And all of my cards today are A2 size, so that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And so I'm just going to add my strips directly to the card base. And I'm going to overlap the balloon. I wanted the balloon on top, so I'm going to overlap it just a hair over that other pattern strip. And then I'm going to take 2 of the smaller pieces that I had cut from the cutting guide, and I'm just going to piece together a strip that's going to go across. Because I am using like the small strips, I'm just going to kind of alternate whatever side the balloon strip is on, the little piece that's going across the center, I'm going to put the balloon on the other side. And then I wanted to pop up my happy birthday a little bit, and so I'm just using some scrap cardstock to put behind it. And I did use an oval die to cut out the happy birthday sentiment. So I'm just adding some dimension with those strips, and we'll put that on. And then we're going to do the second card pretty much the same way, just kind of flip-flopping the order of everything. So if you're using these sketches and you have double-sided paper, you can kind of use the other side to help with not having the same patterns. So on this one, I decided to go with another strip I had and use the same pattern for that strip going across the middle. And then I thought, oh, there's a ton of the peel-off strips in the kit, and so I brought in this white, and I'm going to use that to help separate the pattern so it's not like the same pattern on top of each other. And so I'm just kind of butting those strips right up to the edge of the tiny little horizontal strips that are going across, and I'm just going to use that kind of as like a matte layer, if you would, but just to separate and kind of add a little extra detail to the card. So I have those on. I'm going to burnish those down a little bit and then trim off the edges. And then now I'm going to add my sentiment the same way using some scrap cardstock. I didn't have any foam strips, bigger foam strips over here, and so that's why I decided to go with the scrap cardstock on this one. I always have scrap cardstock. No matter where I'm crafting, there's always some scrap cardstock, right? And we'll put that down. And so now the base of Sketch B is also done. So I wanted to add some extra details to all 4 cards, and in the kit there were these green peel-off hearts, and then there was some silver peel-off circles, and so I am going to be using those. I'm going to use the green on the white card base cards, so on Sketch A, just kind of scattering them around the focal points that I have. This one I decided to go up in the top right corner, just since there's so much going on that rectangle there in the center with all of the balloons. And then on the green card bases, I decided to use the silver circles so that they might stand out a little bit more. And again, I'm just putting 2 on the bottom left and 1 on the top right of the oval, just to kind of scatter them around. And it just adds a little extra something, a little extra shine. So my cutting guide does allow for some extra pieces that can go on the inside of your card. So I love adding scraps on the inside of my card. 1, it helps me use up scrap pieces, and 2, it brings a little bit of the fun and the patterns from the front of the card to the inside. Kind of helps continue the theme a little bit, and then gives a little bit of color and detail to the inside of the card. So I just decided to fishtail all these little bits, and then we'll glue them onto the insides of the cards. I'm going to bring in some really thin white paper from my stash and add that to the inside of the green card bases, just so that whenever I go to write a message, or if I donate these, whoever goes to write a message, there's a nice clear white background that can be written on. And then I'm just going to add the smaller pieces to the bottom left corner of these cards. And I did that because they were the balloon pattern that needed to go, like the balloons needed to go up and down. So for these 2 pieces, I'm just going to add them to the top right of the inside of the card. One of them was the balloons that needed to go up and down, and the other one was just kind of that basic pattern. So quick and easy, those are my 4 cards. Here's one last look at each card. I used a little bit extra of what I thought I would use from the kit, brought in the twine and then several of the peel-offs, so I will link everything in the description box below for you, as well as the kit. Hope you guys enjoyed my cards today, and as always, I thank you so very much for your time, and I hope you all have a very crafty day.